everyone. Happy Wednesday. You made it. You're halfway through the week. This Wind Down Wednesday or Sistah Scifi author chat is super exciting. We will have Kosoko Jackson discussing Survive the Dome, which is a book published by Source Fire. The publication date was yesterday, so it literally just hit shelves. I've read like 220 pages there's like 340 pages. So I'm like 98% of the way done. And I'll finish it right after this Instagram live. That's what happens when you decide to watch Killing Eve as opposed to, oh, hey, Nikisha, you made it. I was like, I'm not very good. Oh, look at that. So I just invited, wait, maybe that's not what I was trying to do. Nikisha, can you request to join on video? Oh, here we go. Boom. I think I figured it out. I sent you a request. Yay! Hey, how are you?
How are you?
Good. Welcome to the first Instagram Live. Can you center this? Excellent. Cool. And Kosoko Jackson will be, and Fire will be joining us shortly. How are you doing this Wednesday? Yeah,
I'm
awesome.
good.
Yay, awesome. So in the chat, if people can let us know how you're doing this Wednesday, how your week has been. Oh, awesome. Oh, and I like stopped and I started smiling because this is Kosoko. Hey, how are you?
Hi, how are you?
Good. Congratulations. Happy birthday.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. So, before I do all the intros and all that fun stuff, I look like that 5 minutes we were all holding our eyes and just being there. Yay. Keisha, do you have a physical copy of the book?
I don't have my physical copy. I just have my digital one.
No worries. Yay. So congratulations. And now, sometimes I get so excited, I forget to, Brittany Lewis says, congrats, yay. And I'm saying, so congrats.
Thank you.
Yay. Erica, you said you can't hear me. Can y'all hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
I can hear you.
Awesome. Now, to introduce herself. Maybe put yourself on mute. Yay. And Books with Brandy. So I guess Brandy also says congratulations. So there's a lot of like celebration for your book birthday. I am Isis Desari. I'm CEO and founder of Sistah Scifi. Sistah Scifi is the first Black-owned bookstore focused on science fiction and fantasy. So every Wednesday we get on, we do a live. Sometimes we talk to members of our community. This Wednesday we're talking to an author about a particular book. So we're really excited about that. So Kosoko Jackson, tell us about yourself. Give us the one-line. We know you wrote the YA sci-fi novel Survive the Dome. What else do you know about you?
Yeah, so I'm Kosoko Jackson. I am an author of a lot of queer Black YA books. Survive the Dome, which just came out this week, which follows Jamal Lawson as he gets trapped inside of an impenetrable dome inside of Baltimore during a Black Lives Matter protest, and him and two Latinx teens team up to try and figure out how to take down this corrupt police department and to turn off this dome. I'm also the author of Yesterday is History, which came out last year, which is a science fiction driven time travel romance for fans of The Time Traveler's Wife, about a boy who gets the ability to time travel after a liver donation and starts a three-way love triangle between an activist in 1969 and the younger brother of his liver donor. So yeah, I do a lot of science fiction writing and like speculative writing. I consume a lot of science fiction. So yeah, I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah, I love that. Nikisha, do you want to introduce yourself before we dive into discussing the book?
Sure. I'm Nikisha Newmark. I just recently finished the Survive the Dome. I'm a full-time mom and wife and a part-time content specialist for an ed tech school.
Yay! Okay. I kind of like want to just dive in on questions. And I'm like, I feel like we need a setup first. And I want to start with like, and also in the afterword and the pre-word, you're very good at like where the idea for the Survive the Dome came from. So I also want to ask that. But what I will ask is how, in your mind, has the book been received? And how is that parallel or different from what you may be expected as an author?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. So when I first decided to write Survive the Dome, I came up with this idea, just to give a little background, in 2020. It was during the George Floyd protests. I lived in New York City, and it was also, as we know, in the middle of COVID. And living in New York during COVID was a very special experience. And not being able to leave my house. And so I was like, how do I like still participate in this active resistance? And I do that through writing. So that's how I came up with this book. It's funny because it wasn't the book that I pitched to my editors originally. I had a completely different book that I was already working on. I was like 5 chapters into it. And I was like, I need to do this. I was lucky enough that Sourcebooks was like, yeah, like run with it. I wrote this book very quickly. For some people who write books or who might not know, this is about an 86,000 word book, and I wrote it from start to finish in 4 months. So it was very, very fast. I kind of just sat down and just wrote it. And I think the biggest thing that I was afraid of is like Survive the Dome, for those who haven't read it or for those who have read it, is a very anti-cop book. Like there is no positive cops in this book. There's no positive white characters in this book. Every positive character is a person of color. In some ways, you could say that the cops are fairly two-dimensional because they are pretty much just militarized antagonists. But I wanted to do that on purpose. I didn't want to create this nuanced discussion about, well, some cops are bad and some cops are good and some Black people are bad and some Black people are good. That wasn't my goal of this book. I feel like personally, any cop, even good cops, who support and stay quiet in such a corrupt system are in fact enabling the system. And so I wanted to do commentary on that. So I was like honestly really afraid because this book is like very anti-cop. And I was like, I'm not sure how the public is going to receive an anti-cop book, even though YA readers are generally skew more anti-cop. And I've been really pleasantly surprised, actually. It's been like giving 4 or 5 star reviews in general. A lot of people have been resonating with this book. There's been very few commentary about like how it's like an anti-cop book. And I think it's the action-packedness of it helps. But I also think that like I'm kind of underestimated the social justice lens of my readers, which is a great thing to learn. So I've actually been pleasantly surprised. It's probably my most well-received book that I've written when I actually thought it was going to be my worst well-received book.
Yay. Now, I didn't read your first book, but I really enjoyed Survive the Dome. But I'll pause there. Keisha, what was your response to the book? Because I could talk about my response to the book. I have like a mini page of notes and like what happened on page 1.
Yeah. As a mom of 3 boys, I have a 14-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 6-year-old. I'm like, this is a book I'm buying, I'm putting on their shelf because this is something that I want to read with them, especially my 14-year-old. I'm like, it's going to just starting in it, it just gets right into the meat of it. There's no, like you said, you're not apologetic. You're not, this is good. This is what I'm writing. And I love that about this book right here. Because I can talk to my kids about it and get their reactions being younger. I mean, I have a daughter who's 20 who would, we've had those adult conversations, from mom to an adult kid. And now I want to see, like you said, the lens of my kids growing up. And they won't understand this right now, the younger ones, but my 14-year-old, we've had these conversations. So having a book like this, having to be able to discuss that part of it, because we weren't like right in it where we live, it's still very, something that's on TV for them. So I really appreciate that. I love the fact that you were not soft in your words. You were very straightforward and had a message. And it was something I think that any kid, regardless of, economic status, where they live, will pick this up and be like, I get it. And I want to talk about it, because there's some parts in there I'm just like, I wonder, and I love that when I have questions. So yeah, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Agreed. And so what I'll ask for people watching is drop in the chat, what resources are y'all using to talk about what was going on, the pandemic and police brutality over the past couple of years? I live in Oakland, California. So the whole situation, both COVID and police brutality, were very real for me. So yeah. One thing I wanted to say is, let me find the quotes. Page 10. And I'll read it. So this is Jamal, and he's connecting with his friend. Damien is, and hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. Damien's white. And life is always easier when you have a white guy by your side. And I was like, oh, we come in like, we yeah. So when you're writing that, I'm imagining in your apartment or in your home, at your laptop, or I don't know if you read it on pen and paper. What was going through your head when those words were on the paper? Like, were you like, oh shit, did I write that? Or you like, yeah, I'm gonna drop these gems?
I would say that Survive the Dome is my most Black book. And so a lot of this came fairly naturally to me. I grew up in a fairly strong activist family. For context, and this is 500 level Blackness. My grandmother's home was the official location for SNCC back in the 60s.
Oh, wow.
My mom was part of the Black Panthers for a hot minute. She marched in Washington. I went to the Million Man March with my father. So I have grown up in a Black activist family in a way that I'm very privileged and very lucky to have. So a lot of these lessons that I kind of imparted in this book have been things that my parents have taught me since I've been very, very young. And I think it's also interesting because looking back on this book, when I was a teenager, I grew up in an affluent white area in Maryland. I was very lucky to go to an exclusive private school. And I remember thinking racism doesn't exist. I was 15 years old, racism doesn't exist. Black people who suffer racism are just Black people who are asking for trouble. And now to be this militant Black person who during the Will Smith slap last week was just coming for white people on social media. So this character, Jamal, just very much was imparting a lot of things that I've learned over the years. It came really, really natural to me. If you follow me on Twitter, you know that I'm very much a militant Black person. So I was lucky to impart that onto this character. And I'm dating someone who's half Black, half white. I have a lot of white friends, and I've seen the differences of having white friends, and also growing up, luckily enough, being someone who, when I was younger, was told you talk white, you act white, and that has gotten me places in life that I cannot deny. Being a safe Black man among white people has definitely helped me in life. I'm 5'8", I'm gay, so there's a lot of levels that help white people feel comfortable around me, which I definitely contribute to how far I've gotten.
Right. And that is so powerful to say, because I do remember being at work one day and somebody's like, oh, you're a different type of Black person or something to that effect, or you're not like those other Black people. And I was like, what is this shenanigans? Also, just, it's not Black History Month, but quick history lesson. SNCC is the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee in the I'm really bad with dates, 1950s, 60s?
Yeah, perfect. Yep.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, and did a lot of activism work, as Kosoko said. Yeah, so Natasha, I'll also pause there. What question do you have, or what was something that resonated for you?
So I didn't know if I didn't want to do anything that was really deep in the book, because I know it just hit and a lot of people are still reading it. But and I think it was chapter 11 or 12, there was when Jamal and Marco are talking to the not the head of the police. I forgot what you called him. Sorry.
Yeah.
And he's making, they're in a location. Like I said, and I really like the way you have the dialogue. talking to everybody? Is that something that you tend to just do naturally as you're writing? Do you kind of set these things up kind of like if it's a movie type? Because it just really flowed and it sounded realistic. Like even though they were younger, I think they were all, 17 to 20 something range. They spoke real to me. Like it was a realistic conversation I think a smart kid would have. They didn't seem cocky or like something that you would, I base it off of my kids. I'm like, my kids would never say that type of thing. It sounded like things that they would say because they were educated, but they were respectful, but they, in the tense emotions and everything that they had. So I just wanted to know, is that something that just normally, and hearing you talk about where you grew up and everything like that, was it difficult to kind of keep it authentic to younger kids? Or did you find like you had to use resources to kind of write?
Yeah, so I spend a lot of time in social media, so that's part of my day job. So I'm on TikTok a lot throughout the day and at night. That's not part of my day job, but I am on TikTok a lot. But I have spent 2 years teaching in high schools, and I taught in one of the worst at-risk schools in actually Washington, D.C. called Ketchum. It's like performs like 3 to 5 grades under like national reading level. I've taught in very affluent parts of Maryland. So I spend a lot of times around teenagers, and I do a lot to like consume teen concepts to make sure that my characters are authentic enough. My dialogue is probably my greatest skill in my writing, so I really appreciate that. And so like dialogue tends to come easy for me for characters. Jamal's dialogue was probably the hardest, and his character arc was in some ways the hardest. And specifically, like a reviewer pointed this out. They were like, in the beginning, I found Jamal to be insufferable because like originally he only went to these protests because it was going to get him into college. And I'm like, hey, like not every Black person is woke, and not every teenager is woke. And frankly, being woke is a privilege, because trying to survive every day when you have multiple things, especially for teenagers who are POCs, being able to spend your time and research about like racial injustice and go to marches and make every choice based on your wokeness often comes with a consequence of missed opportunities or misconceptions from people. So I wanted to write a character who like, he is not less Black just because he wants to go to a good college and thinks that this is a way to do that. But I wanted to write a character that wasn't like, racism is bad and we need to combat it in every single way because I understand everything in the world at the age of 16. So that development of character and how they communicate and how they like deal with authority figures is an arc that I wanted to try to do justly with, especially Jamal.
Great.
Great question. I'm so happy that you said that. So let me bring in Maya's comment. And they say, I have a white partner as well, and would say that statement is very true. And that's the statement about Damien, which we kind of like, Jamal's mindset kind of evolves throughout the book. But for Maya, that statement is very true. I'm safer because of his whiteness when we're out in public. So that statement resonated with her. Going back to Jamal, I did have a question. I was like, so now I have 2 questions. I previously had a question before I reached a pivotal point in the book. I was like, am I supposed to dislike Jamal? Like I felt like the tension. I was like, I don't want to dislike Jamal, but like, And 2, how much of you is in Jamal?
Good question. So it took me a long time to get to this point, but I very much think that like once a book is written, like it no longer belongs to the author. So generally 9 times out of 10, people's perceptions about my characters and my stories, I'm like, that's all valid. What you want to take and come from the story is completely valid. I don't know if people should dislike Jamal, but I did, like I said, want to write a character who was not woke. And so like compared to Yesterday's History, where we have my main character, Andre, who comes from a very affluent family. Like his father is a doctor and his mother is getting tenure at Boston University, and he attends the second best private school in Boston, which is already a very white city. That is a very different character than Jamal, who's middle class, who only lives with his mother outside of Annapolis. And so I wanted to make that kind of juxtaposition between my 2 different characters in a way that would show like growth as an author. But I wanted to also write a character who like, I think it's a little bit disingenuous for a character arc when the character starts out already knowing everything and already being perfect in like the character arc sense, because then where do they grow? The beginning version of Jamal would not be someone who ends up where the end of the book ends without giving spoilers. And so I wanted that arc to be real. As for how much of myself is in Jamal, I would say that I'm probably more Marco than Jamal, especially my high school self. My high school self is actually none of these characters. But myself now is probably more Marco than Jamal. Jamal is actually kind of useless throughout most of the book. And that's okay. But he's pretty useless until like Act 3. But I don't think that a boy who is a photographer is going to be the perfect person for a rebellion in the beginning of a book.
And I mean, useless people need love too. So I'm here for that. And I mean, like, you, even in the beginning when you're like, okay, Jamal, like, he's still a compelling character. I still want him to be safe. And there are moments where his humanity really shines through. And so I think you do a good job of, like, he still has a lot of growth to do, which we all do. We're all human, and he's still compelling, and he's still worthy, and he's still navigating as a young Black man in America. So, I think Keisha, when you were reading Jamal, right, and you kind of alluded to this, were there any parallels to like your sons, like in how they move every day? Like when the mom was like, "Did you do this? Did you get this? Did you get this?" And you're like,
Yeah.
"Jamal," and she's like, "Jamal," like.
And that's something I was thinking about. My son is 14. We live in an actual area where it's predominantly white. So he has the luxury of kind of freely moving around. So for me, it wasn't a similarity. It was sort of the opposite, because I realized, wow, there's some things that my son would never ask me. There's questions that he would never think of. But as a mom and somebody who has lived in different areas, I'm constantly telling him things, or you got to watch out. And so that was one of the reasons why I like reading this book, and it's something I want to share with them because it gives him a different perspective that he's not experienced. We did have some small rallies and some different things going on here. And I chose not to go just because of where we are, for their safety, and it was COVID, and like I said, everything. But now he's old enough to realize, I thought, would I be that mom who would be, yeah, go? Or would I be like, yeah, no, you can't go? And so I love the fact that he was kind of thinking about these things, like, oh my gosh, he was thinking about his mom. And I'm like, yes, he thought about his mom while, he was in the situation. And so that part, I think, for my son, like, my son is 5'11", he's 14, he's 5'11", he's 150 pounds. He looks like everywhere we go, he gets assumed that he's a lot older too. And so that was something I was thinking about, was the similarity between, with the cops and how they talk to the cops, because, when you have children of color, especially young boys, especially, when my son towers over many of his teachers and stuff, there's, how do you talk to the cops? How do you talk to teachers? How do you also advocate for yourself? And that's something I liked about Jamal, because even though, like you said, he was very me, how is this going to affect me? He kind of opened up, and I realized, I got to make sure that my boys are that way. They open up and they see these injustices, but they're also smart in how, they're not. I liked Marco, but I was like, oh, I don't know if I could live with a Marco, because he would scare me every day.
Marco's a bad boy.
He
I
is.
love Marco.
I do too, but not as
Before
good
we
as my
talk about
son.
the other two characters, we have a question about Jamal from Bobo. Instagram names, they get me every time. And it's for you, Kosoko. How do you pick your characters' names? Like, do you use random name generator? Do you like mirror it off of friends? How does that work for you?
I actually really like this question because it's the issue that I deal with every book that I write. I try to pick Black names because I like to represent Blackness in my books. So I used to not write Black main characters. I didn't start writing my first Black main character like 2017, 2018, because I was like, Black queer characters don't sell. And ever since then, like, actually an agent of mine was like, hey, I read your manuscript. This character sounds like he's supposed to be Black, but you wrote him white. And I was like, well, I guess, but like, Black characters don't sell. She was like, it doesn't matter what sells or what doesn't. If he's supposed to be Black or he's supposed to be white. And I was like, I don't know if she's like, which one is he? Because I was like, he's Black. And so they made me, and so like, ever since then, like, I write Black main characters, I want them to have some level of Blackness that is like evident on the page. I think that part of it is about readers. Readers by default, if you do not generally remind them constantly throughout a book, default that a character is white. No fault of their own, it's just so much media is white that we just default to them. By using the name, I can kind of trick readers into doing that. Also, as someone who has a very unique name, I like to kind of like give homage to that through my Black characters. The problem is that eventually you kind of like run out of names. I have to find a balance between names that are Black with a capital B, but not so Black that they make white people uncomfortable or they don't know how to pronounce. And there's a limited amount of names that sound good, like Andre, Jamal. My other book has Douglas. We have Kian in my adult romances, Xavier. We're running out of names. Isaiah's the next one, hopefully. Like, we're running out of names. So we're going to have to, like, do some more research soon.
Yeah, I like the Black man name Sekou. If I were to ever have a son, his name would be Sekou.
Okay,
I don't know.
I take that. That's a good
Yeah, and it's kind of easy to pronounce. So, like, if I ever see, like, I'm like, Kosoko wrote a book with a character named Sekou, I'm like, that's me.
Yes, that's you. I will send you a signed copy.
Let's, okay. So great question. Thank you for that. I'm checking the chats. If you have any other questions about Survive the Dome. Also, I love this. I mean, so I'm very, as you can tell, I'm very partial to purple. I love this color in purple and black. I know there's
really
a
good.
cover in like red and like I think
it's red because the reason is because if you look at Jamal's hair, Baltimore's inside of his hair. There's an outline of Baltimore inside of his hair. You can't really see it on the black version. Yeah, so the red, it pops out more.
Thank you for that. Oh, this is why we do author talks. Okay, so that is Jamal. Let's talk about Marco.
Yeah, so Marco is a bad boy hacktivist. He is inside the dome without giving too much spoilers because he wants to be admitted into a hacktivist group called Nemesis, and he believes that like being inside like the room where it happens and trying to figure out like social injustice and how to like use his own hacking ability to solve this will help him enter into this activist group. He's an orphan. He has a matriarch who is a Black mother figure inside of Baltimore called Jenna. She's like very much like the neighborhood mother. She takes in a lot of strays. He's like her de facto mother. He's Latinx. He's a tall, slightly muscular bad boy who hacks, and I love him to death. I would die for him.
Me too. Nikisha, I'll pause there. I have a question about like Marco's when we meet Jenna and her reaction to Marco. But what questions do you have? Because I want us to.
Actually, I wanted to talk to you about the cover, if that's okay. Just
sure.
Did you have any say? Is that something that you pushed for? Because I have to say, I saw your book on NetGalley, and that cover is what stopped me and made me push to request it. So I loved it. It just grabbed my attention when you're flipping through and you see every book either has, certain, it kind of looks redundant. And then you see this, the young boy. And like I said, it looked like one of my kids. I stopped, immediately read it, saw it was sci-fi and YA. And I'm like, okay, I got to see if I can get a hold of this book. So I just want to know if that was intentional on your part or how did that process of choosing that cover?
So I have been very lucky with my covers. I don't have much involvement with my covers, generally because covers and titles, like when you become an author, like I think all authors have cover and title opinions, of course, because there are babies, but covers are meant to draw the readers into the book, which this one has done, case in point. So I try to not, like, from a business perspective, be like, if I don't like it, like, intensely, then we're going to have a problem. But, like, if I just don't, like, love it, but my publisher thinks it's going to be the thing that's going to draw readers, then so be it. I had no idea what this cover was going to look like. I was on vacation in Seattle, rolled over 3 hours later from everybody else, saw a cover sketch, and I was blown away. This is like my favorite cover of all time. I think it's a beautiful cover. I've been very lucky with covers with Black men on them that have been great. They're not bad. They're not objectifying. I think this is like a perfect cover for a book.
Thank you.
It's gorgeous. Great question. And I want to thank your agent who was like, I think this character is supposed to be Black. Let's make him unambiguously Black. So yeah, like go home, text your agent, be like, that was a great move. And even in sci-fi where like innately there's a lot of like queerness and gender nonconformingness, that's not a term, but we'll rock with it.
I got you.
There probably are still challenges to write like Black gay male characters, or I'm asking, have you felt that that was a challenge?
So yeah, I mean, I feel like writing is a weird field. It's not a meritocracy, and every book that you write is judged, yes, based on your sales record and how well your other books did, but also as an independent commodity of how it will sell. So of course there's some authors that we have that like no matter what book they try to sell to their agent, they're going to sell. But most of us, each book is looked at it independently. So but on the flip side, I am also very lucky that almost every book that I've written and put into like publication for attention publication has been sold, and they've all starred Black male characters. So I think there's definitely a challenge, and it is hard, especially for authors starting to write. Like I hear so many stories about Black writers, especially Black queer writers who publish. Like we already have like that one Black queer book. We already have our Black male book, which is unfortunate. But on the flip side, I do know that some of those publishers, I am that book. So like at the same time, it's a little bit of a weird space to be in. But every book is different. I've just been lucky with my publishing. But it is hard. Like it's still hard when I write a book to figure out how am I going to make this book so I feel like it tells Blackness authentically, but also so it doesn't alienate my white readers, because the majority of readers are still white, and writing is as much an art as it is a business, which is a weird thing that I came to terms with early on. And I think every book that I do tries to straddle representing Blackness authentically, telling the social justice story that I want to write, because to me, every book of mine has a social justice angle to it, but also making sure it appeals to the most populous group of readers, which is frankly white women. It's a really shitty thing to say, but white women make up like 80% of the reading body. And if I want my books to be considered a success, and for people of color and marginalized groups, our books usually have to exceed better than the average white book to be continued to bought. I always have to take that into consideration, which is something that my white counterparts don't always have to think about.
That is brilliantly insightful. So, Nikisha, while you keep your next question, I'll also like for the people watching, how do you navigate reading science fiction where the central character is a different ethnicity than you? I mean, because I think as Black people, we don't question that. It's like, oh, I'm better read, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, or, Verity or something. I randomly picked that up. And it's like, the main character is white. And I'm like, I just navigate that world. But I never thought like, some readers have to do extra work to do that. So how do you navigate that? So
for me, I'm lucky as an author because I use it as like every book that I read it for inspiration for my next book. So if I'm reading a book and I'm like, this is about, just like hypothetically throwing a book out here, a white woman who in a period piece bucks societal norms, falls in love with a soldier, and like her life changes. I'm like, I love these books. I absolutely love my books with my white female heroines who buck society. But what if this was a Black guy? And how does that change the story? And how does that change societal expectations? How are societal expectations change if it's an African-American man who was adopted by a white man in Britain and is the son of a white like duke in the like late 1800s? Wow, on this call I'm coming out with a new book. That's like how I function, and then I start writing a book. So for me, that's how I come up with things and how I like reconcile with it. But also like I just enjoy stories. So I love to read stories in general. I love to watch TV and watch movies. And honestly, some authors and some movies, I think there's a big push that we have in society to make worlds representative and diverse, which I think is really, really good. But there's some authors, and like I don't want touching diversity because I know you're gonna screw it up. And so I'm okay with it being a full white universe because I am reading this from enjoyment. I don't always need it to be diverse if you're gonna make this an uncomfortable experience for me.
And that's very true. Or like, I think what's even more jarring is like suddenly you have a Black character and there's no mention of their Blackness, and their Blackness seems very like not conceptualized. Right. Like it's like what? Exactly. What? Yeah. So understood. Okay. So at this part, we're at the halfway mark, like almost exactly. Wouldn't it be great? Do you want to read an excerpt?
Oh, you didn't prep me for that.
Oh, my bad. And you can say like, you can definitely hold your boundaries. Like, Isis, we did not talk about this. The answer is no, and that's totally fine.
Let me read the prologue. I can do the prologue.
Here for it.
Ooh, you said, do you want to do a reading? And I was like, a reading? Sure, where's this prologue? Okay, I have never read this book aloud, and I have not read it since I did my copy edit for it, which was 8 months ago. So we will see how this goes. This is going to be an experience for all of us. Science had never been Governor Ambrose's forte. She had a passion for it, though. She loved that others found pleasure in understanding the world at large, but there were too many unknowns, and she wanted answers. To her, science was nothing more than an ocean waiting for a bigger, smarter, more well-funded fish to come around. Sitting in the governor's mansion with the first pink light of summer washing over the hills and illuminating her study, she sipped her tea. 1 part milk, 4 parts water, a splash of sugar. Her laptop was pristine, like everything in her life. The screen flickered once as if the reception was poor and then came into focus. Video from one of the testing rooms down in Fort Meade, streaming clearly and directly to her computer. To the untrained eye, there wasn't much to see, simply a thick white ring, roughly 20 feet in diameter, with a bull standing in the center. Outside of the ring by a panel stood a man, a scrawny one with glasses too big for his face and a face too small for glasses, who gave a thumbs up to the camera. Governor Ambrose tapped her nude-colored nails against the hardwood desk. The screen flickered again. The bull seemed agitated. The man seemed unbothered. Governor Ambrose smiled. Any moment now. Finally, something happened. The screen flickered with a blinding white light, like 100 bulbs had exploded at once. For a moment, everything was out of focus, just white and static. Governor Ambrose paused mid-sip. Was this it? Had the billions of dollars she had secretly funneled from the Maryland budget over the past 4 years, with the help of several like-minded individuals, been wasted on this? No, this couldn't be. She had hired the best scientist because she wasn't a scientist. This had to work. She couldn't take no for an answer. What other choice was there for her? She had won the election by the skin of her teeth. She wouldn't win another one. Running on a platform of law and order was tough, especially for a woman. It had been a results-driven campaign that had threaded a careful line between too tough on crime for the liberals and not tough enough for the conservatives. She needed an ace in the hole. She needed surefire results. She needed to make a name for herself. She needed to make a bang. And what better way than to create something that would eliminate crime in the 3rd most violent city in America? She could practically taste the air of the White House now, maybe even a Nobel Prize. But the path to the presidency was paved with men who made backroom deals and sacrifices, and most such rooms were closed to people like her. She had to come out with something so brazen, so bold, so useful that no one could ignore her. That's how the dome was born, a shield to contain threats within until they could be neutralized and deal with some of their poisonous infectiousness. So their poisonous infectiousness didn't infect everyone. Putting the half-drunk cup of tea down slowly, she leaned forward. After a few taps on her keyboard, the camera zoomed in. The bull hadn't moved, but at least it seemed fine. That was more than she could say for the first 4 test subjects. Without looking, she reached into her black suit jacket and pulled out her phone. "What is going on?" she texted. But she didn't get a chance to send it. The bull twitched, shook its head violently, and then charged. Her breath caught in her throat. This could be it. This could be the moment. Perhaps someone would have been more concerned with the well-being of the man in the room. Governor Ambrose was not that person. The video had no sound, but she could practically hear the whining whirl of metal electricity. She could feel the tension in the room as the muscular bull charged toward the scientist. That was the moment everything could change. The distance between the bull and the scientist was less than 20 feet, but it felt like it took hours for the bull to reach him. Well, the bull didn't exactly reach him. There was a pulse of light that rippled outwards from the horns when it made contact with something. Again, the bull attacked, shaking its head in frustration. Each time it slammed its horns against the invisible barrier, another pulse of light rippled out, revealing the shape of a 15-foot-tall dome for a fraction of a second. Governor Ambrose was not an expressive person. That was what the polls had said about her. How could a woman who doesn't show any emotion be trusted? Then again, other polls had said, how could a woman who shows too much emotion be trusted? There was no way to win. Right now, she wanted to jump up and scream, but instead, she sat quietly, reveling in her joy. Project ADP was a success. her phone vibrated. She looked down, expecting to see a text applauding her victory. But instead, she was met with a simple message from her press secretary. A trial date has been set.
What?
Let me just say that I have not read that in a while. I'm like, oh, this is good.
That's what I was like, yeah, because I read this. I'll be honest, I started reading the book like 2 days ago. And I read that prologue and I'm like, okay, I'm in. Like, I'm here for this. Also, I love like highly ambitious women with questionable morals. And so like I was here for Ambrose.
Listen, I don't really like writing 2D characters as a whole. So like the police force was like as much 2D as I would go. Like, I do not condone at all what Governor Ambrose is doing, but she is a woman trying to succeed in politics in a space where like women are constantly told they're not enough or they're too much all at the same time. And so I strongly believe that we cannot accept a person's motivations and what they're doing, but understand them in a little bit. And I can kind of understand a woman who would go to the extreme ends to be somebody who is recognized when a man would have to do a tenth of that.
Agreed. So I like Naya also enjoyed the prologue. Nikisha, what did you think of the prologue?
Like I said before, I love that you just kind of jumped right into the action. It wasn't a lot of unnecessary information. It was like, okay, what's going to happen? What is this all about? It really just took off from the beginning. So that prologue kind of sets you up. And like you said, for the woman, I'm like, wow, this person's going to be either really evil in a good way or really evil in a bad way. So it was just one of those, what's going on with her? And I like that. It wasn't just, sometimes you just need that questionable evil person, but then you also kind of appreciate the fact that they're a go-getter. So as a woman, it's just like, hey, she's going for what she wants. Maybe not in the best way, but she's going for it. I love that.
Maya also says, I love that. Yes. Bobo says, my book is still in the mail, so they can't wait. Yes, we're getting orders out as we speak. So yes, you can order it at Sistah Scifi. Down in the links. Buy your copy. There's an audiobook coming out, right?
There is. No idea when, but in the next couple months, I think.
Okay. And the audiobook will be available on Libra FM soon. I like to immersive read where I read the book and listen to the audiobook at the same time. So when you started writing the book in your 4-month writing window, which is very impressive to me, did you know that this would be the prologue from the beginning, or did you like come back to it, or was this section in different parts of the book at first?
I write really extensive outlines. So before I start writing, my outlines are usually 5 to 10 pages single space because I fast draft, like we said, these 4 months. And so my outlines need to be like really tight so I can just look at this 5-page document. Each paragraph is like 2 chapters and then I can expand on that. So, and I write linearly, so I just personally can't jump around a book. I can kind of jump around, like maybe like skip a chapter or 2, but I can't write chapter 1 and chapter 20, which some writers do. I knew this prologue was going to be the prologue. I am pretty much anti-team prologue, so it's funny that I wrote a prologue. And so I knew this was going to be it. I think the prologue changed slightly. I think the last line, instead of a trial date has been set, originally was not guilty, was the original prologue, final line. But I think we wanted to pull it back just a little bit. But the prologue is almost exactly, besides that like one line, what it was when I sold the book.
Nice. And to me, it was fascinating that the prologue doesn't introduce us to Jamal, Kat, or Marco.
Yeah.
So what was the decision behind that?
It was kind of like an homage to like old like Bond-esque villains or old like villain TV shows where like the book or the movie starts with like a castle on the hill and the lightning strikes and you see like this evil person and then and like my experiment has been successful, and then it like jumps back to like the main character. Plus I had never written a prologue before, so I was like, I don't know where to start this book, and I was like, this is where I think we should start. And I just kind of like think about it cinematically that like I didn't want to do so much info dumping later on that was objectively. Let me actually take a step back. When you're writing first person narrative, the character is usually an unreliable narrator because you're only seeing from their point of view. For this dome and for the information about the dome, I wanted the reader to have a little bit of objective knowledge before before they got to see Jamal's point of view from the dome. Not because he was like a bad main character, but I wanted them to have an objective understanding of it and then see how different people interpret it.
Love it. Okay, so there are 2 questions in the chat. So I will bring those into while Nikisha, you think of your next question. I think the first question is from Bobo. You recently published your first adult book. Will there be any adult sci-fi in your future? I'll pause
The
there.
goal is yes. The hope is yes. I'm actually loosely plotting what my first adult book will be, like this week, actually, so I can start writing it in the next couple of weeks. So we'll see what it will be. Who knows? Kosoko jumps around. I write whatever I want, which is like a very intentional writing. So we could have family saga, we could have science fiction, we might have literary fiction. Who knows what it's going to be next? Ask me in a month.
Care for it. And they also appreciate the fact that the prologue set a theme rather than starting with the main character. That it pulls them in, pulled them all the way in, as it did for me. Nikisha?
Yeah, actually, to kind of piggyback off of the other question, so this was why young adult sci-fi, but the theme of it could go very well be adult. What made you decide to make it young adult as opposed to just a adult book?
Yeah, so part of it was contractual obligations because I owed my publisher another YA book. The other part is that like YA is my bread and butter, and I write YA for a specific like moral reason, specifically because I think it's really important and impactful to create books that show authentic representation and teach lessons as a sub-theme for teenagers. Like this can be for a lot of teens their first time seeing these things. There's going to be white teens in parts of the United States who pick this up for the first time, who it's going to be their first time that they're encountering like the police force as a negative point of view, front and center in a book for them, and without like exterior influences of their parents or their conservative community. I think that's a really important thing that differentiates YA from adult books, that this lesson or understanding that our books have an impressionable effect on teenagers and its readers is different than adult books, which can write like really anything. It's why we don't have like the glorification of serial killers in basically like YA books generally, because like it or not, yes or no, this is not a question about whether teens are stupid or they can't understand things, but teens are impressionable and they do absorb things like sponges in a way that like adults don't. A teenager can read a book about a serial killer. I mean, we've seen it before in the most horrific sense about a group of girls who like praises like Slender Man and ends up killing another girl. I remember that happened like 3 years ago. Adults, 9 times out of 10, there's always outliers, don't do that, just because in general they can separate fantasy and like these things differently than YA. So that's the reason why it was a YA book and why I wanted it to be a YA book. I could have definitely made it an adult book, and it would have been probably darker and more gruesome. There would have been a lot of different changes. It probably would have been triple point of view. It probably would have been third person. There would definitely be a lot more violence in the book. But I specifically think that from like this actiony point, it's like important to be a YA book.
Yeah, and I enjoyed it as a YA book. And I mean, like, it's odd because there's a lot of science fiction and fantasy that falls in YA. I don't think YA is my favorite genre, but I really enjoy it, so I have to don't. Let's talk about Cat. I want to say like, oh, Cat, I'm most like Cat, but I'm like, it's like if a cop came to me, I'd be like, Jamal, good luck.
Bye. Get in your Hummer, get in your Jeep, turn around, and drive away.
Pretty much.
So
I think, okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I think there were 2 things that were really surprising to me. Well, actually, just one thing. And this could have been like I think I said this before you joined. I read like 250 pages of the book. Like I read like up to like read that if I know how to. So this could have been explaining the portion that I didn't, like trying to be prepared for this. But it was interesting that Kat was in the military. I understand like that gave her skills, but like what was your framework in deciding like that path for Kat?
Yeah, so I believe, like with most of our great pieces of literature, trios are generally what we see. We usually see 3 or 5, and we need somebody who fits every role. We usually need the smart character. We usually need the kind or the just character who is the moral compass, and then we also need the bruiser. And so each of those align with those. Marco is frankly the smart one in the group. Jamal is the kind one who has the moral compass that eventually like leads this rebellion. And then we have Kat, the bruiser. typically in literature, I feel like the girl is usually the smart one or the kind one. And I like to buck societal norms, just like I love my female main characters in my period pieces. And I was like, I kind of love this idea of this female girl who is like the strongest out of the group. And I think that's really badass. And I think that's really fucking cool. And we don't see enough of those in books. And so honestly, these two boys would be helpless without her. Like, if it wasn't for Kat, these two boys would be dead by now. Like, they are just not great. They're not great by themselves. They share one brain cell. Like, they would probably be dead. And I wanted to write like a really cool main character who does that. Like, there is, and if you have the arc, this is in the book. If you have the final copy, it is not in the book. There's a specific scene in the book where a cop in a militarized suit basically corners Kat and Jamal. And the cop specifically calls them the N-word and the derogatory word for a Latinx character. Those two words were taken out in the book just because I didn't want to cause like offense to readers. But there's a very important scene where she says that like, our names are Jamal and Catherine. You're going to remember those names when we beat your ass. And that was like a very important scene for me because I wanted to show that like, she's kicking ass, she's taking names. And frankly, I did it before Will Smith did it. You're going to insult me, you're going to insult my people, I'm going to beat your ass. So Will Smith took that from me, not me from him. I think that was a very important scene for me to write. It's probably one of my favorite scenes in the book because I love writing fight scenes, but I also like that it's a female-led fight scene, and most of the fight scenes are led by Kat. We don't see as much literature with boys and girls, where girls are the violent force.
Yes, I like somebody else wrote in the comments, I stand for Kat. Yeah, she's like, I'm the muscle. I'm like, yes, you are, sis. But yeah.
It's also in the end of the book, so I don't really consider it a spoiler because many readers missed it. Kat is also asexual, which is like also some ace rep in the book too.
I did miss that.
There's a specific, it's very, very niche, and it's very, very, there's like a line, like obviously it's a YA book, so like y'all, there's romance. It's not a spoiler. There's like a specific, I forget what she exact says, but she's pretty much like, you two can do what you want. Like, I'm not into that. I think it's the exact line or something like that. One reader actually messaged me and she was like, I'm Latinx, I'm ace, is Kat ace? And I'm like, yes, girl, yes, there's representation here. It's very, very small, but like, because like, this is not a romance heavy book. Like, the romance is like tertiary in this book. And I didn't want to spend a lot of time unpacking that because I didn't want it to be like a big thing.
But no, I think ace representation is huge. So thank you for letting us know.
I just want to jump in and say, yes, as someone who, my daughter and friends they're teaching me a lot about gender and gender fluidity. So having Kat not only be strong, but very strong in who she is and not kind of like, oh, the lovesick one on the side, kind of like looking out and, waiting to be the damsel in distress. I love the fact that you made her strong, but also that military part that you were talking about. She had the skills. She just, one of the things about YA is just, your average 16-year-old isn't going to be able to kick somebody's butt, but you showed that she had the skills. And I love that part. And also, another reason why this book is going on my shelf is because we have people in my family. I want them to see books where they are represented. And you just, even though it's sci-fi, it's young adult, the romance is there. It's showing, it as a normal. It's not just there just to be added. It's part of the story. And I've been, looking for books like this. I want them on my shelf so that when my nieces and nephews pull a book out, they can see themselves and they can see themselves in a good, positive light. So that little line with Kat, I'm like, oh, yes, okay. But it wasn't like, oh, this is me, and just using it just to use it type of a thing, if that makes sense. So totally I really appreciate that thoughtfulness on that.
Yeah, that means a lot.
Yay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was going back to another book, and actually really enjoyed the book, but sometimes what happens when you have female characters, particularly femme characters, is they become the damsel in distress. I remember I read the book, and then the femme character said twice, like, so what are we going to do? And I was like, if she don't get her life together. So what I loved about Kat, she's like, this is the plan. Y'all ain't got much choice. And when she didn't, she's like, I don't know. We will figure it out. But right now, I don't know. So Kat, I was definitely there for Kat. So we have 9 minutes. I have a question. Keisha, you can ask a question. And then we'll do rapid fire questions. Rapid fire questions are always like my favorite part of these My Dad Wednesdays. And I don't know why. So my last question is, It sounds like the trio will continue. I'll leave it there. Will the series continue? Is this book one of a series? Will we see more of Pat, Jamal, and Mark?
So it is not a series, but it has series potential. So if it does well, who knows what could happen? I definitely have a series if we do a series. I might have to revamp that because it might be too close to home. It was originally set in New York City, and how the metro system is is technologically advanced and used to basically creating redlining. And it was done by the state governor, and now our governor was found to be a horrible person. So it's a little bit too close to home, so we might have to revamp that. But
No, don't revamp it. That's precedent. Write that story and name a character sake. That's all. Those are all my requests.
We got to introduce new characters anyway. So yeah, we'll see what happens. There is a series, and there could be it's very set up that there could be series. So who knows?
Nikisha's very friendly too.
Boom.
There we go. We got our names. We're good. Now I just need to write it.
If I ever write a book, there will be a character named Keisha, Nikisha. Yes.
I love that.
Thank you. Speaking of other books, my question is going to be, since you're not definitely saying to a standalone, what other point of view from the book would you have written? Because I feel like there's a couple of other characters that, could give, I just want to know if there's anybody else you thought about writing originally, or was it always intended to be from Jamal's point of view?
Always intended to be from Jamal's point of view. There was a hot minute where I was going to make Jamal the son of a police officer, and that would have been some interesting dynamics for the book. But I was like, I can't unpack that. This is a fast draft book. We got to do this in 4 months because of when my contract is due if I want to hit these deadlines. That can't be this book. But there was a hot minute when he was going to be the son of a police officer.
That would have been oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. We have 6 minutes. So we'll do 5 to 6 minutes of rapid fire questions. So first one, are you ready?
Yep.
Let's go. So Black Panther or Luke Cage?
Black Panther.
Yay! I always think the question.
Oh, you want me to answer the question?
Yeah, and also if you're in the chat, y'all can also feel free to answer that question.
You cut out. I'm sorry. What was the first part of the question?
So, Black Panther or Luke Cage?
Oh, Black Panther.
Yeah, usually I ask that question, Black Lightning or Luke Cage? And then I was like,
I probably would have given you Black Lightning anyway. I'm not a big Luke Cage fan.
Yeah, and I think that question makes more sense because you're why would you of course it's Black everything. So yeah. Killmonger or Magneto? So both compelling villains.
Magneto.
Magneto.
Okay. I like that.
Specifically because, as I'm sure many people know, X-Men is a perfect allegory, and it was written as an allegory for Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. And it was done by Stan Lee. And when I was younger, I think a lot of us when we were younger are very I'm obviously Malcolm X when you're a teenager. I'm Malcolm X, now. I am going to be swinging fists, I'm punching, and Magneto was not wrong. And Professor Xavier needs to just, he got the power to control the minds of everybody. We need to just rewrite some brains because this is the reason why people hate mutants, because you're not willing to do what needs to be done. Let's call it what it is.
I'm here with it. So next one, and this might be a bit dated, but we're gonna run with it anyway. Eartha Kitt Catwoman or Halle Berry Catwoman?
Oh, Eartha Kitt.
I need to get another or. Everybody's oh, Eartha Kitt. Why are you even asking this question? Okay, we have a lot more. So next one is Erykah Badu or Janelle Monáe?
Janelle Monáe. Erykah Badu can never appear on time for her concerts.
Yeah, you're right. Oh yeah,
I'm calling Tyrone.
Go ahead.
I said, I'm going to be a Call Tyrone fan for life, so I've had to use those words.
You got to put your phone down. I agree. Okay, but I don't know. Magneto was a crowd favorite, so I like that. Um, oh, okay, I have one. Essence Fence or Afropunk?
Oh, I've never been to either, but probably Afropunk.
I've never been to either. I'll
You can
I'll
choose.
neutral.
What are you doing? Why aren't you going?
I'm like making notes of things I got to do in my life. Africa.
Essence
Yeah,
Fest
I
is
think we'll keep
in
Afropunk
New
too.
Orleans, right?
Oh, and wow, so is the crowd. Afropunk is also a crowd favorite. Janelle Monáe is also a crowd favorite. So yeah, there's a lot of alignment. So I like this. Um, Beach or the lake?
Lake.
Beach.
I hate sand, and I'm also deeply afraid of open water because I fully believe there is a giant squid out there waiting to kill me. So,
I can't, and it's valid. So more Afropunk. The beach is actually really popular, and I posed a question like that, and I was like, but I actually want to go to the pool. So I was like, I don't. It's like, why did I ask a question like that? Who knows? Um, did I have another one in mind? No, and we're at the 2 minute mark, so that's perfect. So I'll leave with like Kosoko, thank you so much. I appreciate one. I think there's a special place in heaven for Black creators. I appreciate you so much for writing Surviving the Dome. And that's not just because I'm a bookseller, but I know like as a Black creative, it can become it. I imagine, just I don't know, but I imagine like deciding to sit down and write an authentic Black character in addition to like a queer character is like an intentional choice. And like everything about the book, from like the name, the first couple of pages have the list of names of people who've lost their lives to police brutality. I thought that was beautiful. The setting of Baltimore was just like, I felt so held as a reader. So I want to thank you for that.
thank you, and thank you for having me. This has been great. I love talking about books, but I especially love talking about Black books with Black people because it's a different conversation.
We'll talk about offline how the conversation would be different. They were just spoken great, and it would have been different. Nikisha, thank you for hopping on and being the voice for the reader, and being objective and telling us what you love. I appreciate you, girl.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you again for a book that I just loved and am ready to share. So,
Thank you.
congratulations.
Thank you. All right.
Congratulations, congratulations. Okay, and so one last thing, because I am a big seller, I actually have to sell books. You can buy it, Survive the Dome on Sistah Scifi, that is sisterscifi.com, or you can buy it on our Instagram page or on our Facebook page. And selfishly, please buy the book so there'll be a sequel, because I want to read more Jamal, more poets.
There you go. You get a sequel if you buy the book.
Get the sequel. Bye, everyone. Have a good
Bye.
Wednesday.
You too.